Jimmy Kimmel smiled into the camera like he always did. The lights were warm. The audience was loud. And the rhythm of the night had held steady from the opening monologue to the second guest. Easy laughs. A celebrity who knew how to stay charming. Familiar pacing. Then Jimmy lifted a card and said, "Our next guest is someone I'm sure you've read about, maybe tweeted about, possibly been blocked by. Please welcome Elon Musk." The applause was quick, but it wasn't cheerful. It sounded like surprise trying to become enthusiasm. Elon Musk walked out in silence. He didn't wave, didn't smile. He wore black, clean, plain, stiff in the shoulders. He moved like someone who had already measured the room and decided it wasn't worth adjusting to. He shook Jimmy's hand. Not tightly, just long enough. Then he sat. And before Jimmy could speak again, Elon said, "I assume you've written this segment already." Jimmy blinked, laughed once, short and real. "Well, we've got questions. But no, I haven't written your answers." Elon said, "You've written the audience's reaction, though. The smirks, the rhythm, the setup, the punchline. You do this part better than me." Jimmy smiled. "You think this is a setup?" Elon looked at him directly. "I think this is a machine. And you expect me to play the part I've already been edited into." The audience laughed, but less now, because Elon hadn't smiled once, and he hadn't raised his voice. He'd just said something that didn't sound like a joke, and didn't seem interested in being treated like one. Jimmy leaned in. "Okay, Elon, you run companies. You shape markets. You influence elections, depending who you ask. But this is a comedy show. Can you sit here like a person, not a platform?" Elon replied, "Can you ask me something that isn't calibrated for applause?" Jimmy looked at his card, then flipped it over. He tapped the blank side with his pen and said, "Let's try it your way." Elon nodded once. The air in the studio shifted, because now it wasn't about performance. It was about what happens when neither side agrees to be softened. Jimmy Kimmel leaned into the pause. He knew how to pull a segment back. He'd done it 100 times. Soften, redirect, land a laugh, reset the rhythm. But Elon wasn't giving him the shape. There was no rhythm to reset. Jimmy said, "All right, you're not here for charm, I get that. But let's ask something real. Why do you think people see you as arrogant?" Elon replied, evenly, "Because I don't apologize for thinking faster than the format allows." Jimmy smiled. "See, that sounds arrogant." Elon said, "Only if you assume performance is the standard. I don't rehearse likability. I just answer." The audience shifted. Some laughed, but not the kind of laugh the show was built for. This one was sharper, smaller, less joy, more tension. Jimmy leaned back slightly. "So you're saying the audience is part of the problem?" Elon answered, "No, I'm saying the room expects me to be a punchline or a threat. Anything else makes people uncomfortable." Jimmy crossed his arms. "You came here knowing I'd ask hard questions. So let me ask this. Why walk into a room that doesn't trust you?" Elon looked at him. "Because trust isn't the point. Clarity is. I don't need to be liked. I need to speak where I'm not supposed to." The lights didn't dim. The crowd didn't cheer, because no one knew what to do with that. Jimmy looked at the next card, then didn't pick it up. He said, "Okay, what would you say right now if you knew we wouldn't clip it, meme it, or twist it?" Elon answered, "That most conversations break because the person listening is rehearsing their rebuttal instead of receiving the thought." Jimmy asked, "And you think that's me?" Elon replied, "I think that's what the segment is built for. You may be listening, but the room was built to react." Backstage, a producer whispered, "Do we need to move on?" The director shook his head. "No one's blinking. Let it burn slow." Jimmy tried again, not to win, just to reframe. "What don't we get about you?" Elon said, "That I'm not trying to be understood. I'm trying not to be reduced." The audience didn't laugh. They didn't clap. They just listened. And for a comedy show, that was suddenly the most unexpected reaction of all. Jimmy Kimmel didn't pick up the next card. He didn't need to, because the questions he came with belonged to a version of Elon Musk that hadn't shown up. And the version that had was changing the room. Jimmy asked, "Do you care what people think of you?" Elon Musk answered, "Only when their assumptions get printed louder than my words." Jimmy tilted his head. "So yes." Elon paused, then said, "I care about distortion, not dislike. The audience didn't laugh. They didn't fidget. Because they could feel it now. This wasn't an act of control. It was an act of stripping away. And Elon, for all his armor, wasn't dodging anymore. He was deciding what to leave behind in the room. Jimmy leaned in. What's the biggest lie told about you that you've never corrected? Elon looked down, just for a second, then said, that I enjoy power. I don't. I tolerate it because it gives me access to the parts of the world I'm trying to fix. Jimmy asked, so you're saying this isn't about ego? Elon answered, ego is how people explain what they don't want to believe came from effort. That landed. Not because it was polished. Because it wasn't. It didn't sound like branding. It sounded like a man who finally stopped managing perception and just spoke. Jimmy paused, then said, you know, I didn't expect this. I expected you'd come in here swinging or smiling or dodging. But this, Elon finished for him, doesn't fit the segment. Jimmy nodded. No, it doesn't. Elon said, then maybe you finally got what you wanted, something real. The audience didn't react. Because this wasn't a twist. It was a choice. The choice to let the space be heavier than the camera was designed to hold. Backstage, the producer tapped his headset. Segments over time. Do we go to break? The director replied. Not yet. Something's happening. And something was. But no one could name it. Only that Jimmy Kimmel had stopped performing. And Elon Musk had stopped deflecting. Jimmy said, this is the longest we've gone without a laugh on this show. Elon replied, then maybe we're finally saying something worth hearing. Jimmy looked at him. You think laughter cheapens it? Elon said, no. I think laughter keeps people from sitting inside the parts that don't resolve. The audience stayed silent. Not confused. Just suspended. Because they could feel it too. This wasn't a takedown. And it wasn't a redemption arc. It was something else. Two men in public, out of format, unwilling to shrink the moment into something smoother. Jimmy finally asked, why do you do this? The press, the tweets, the stage. If you hate it so much, why keep walking into it? Elon's voice was quieter now. Because influence isn't the same as communication. You can be followed by millions and still not be heard. Jimmy asked, and this? Elon replied, this is the first time I've spoken in a room where the goal wasn't to be cheered or destroyed. It was just to survive the silence between the questions. The camera didn't move. The director didn't cut. No one wanted to be the one who ended it. Because what was happening wasn't a disaster. It was dignity. Held uncomfortably. Honestly. Fully. Jimmy finally leaned back. You didn't come to win, did you? Elon said, no. I came to stop losing myself every time I'm reshaped into something digestible. The audience didn't applaud. They didn't need to. The room was already full. And no one wanted to be the first to let the weight go. The studio had never been this quiet. Not after a guest left. Not after a joke missed. And definitely not during a live taping with no resolution in sight. Jimmy Kimmel glanced toward the camera, then didn't say anything. He looked back at Elon Musk, who was sitting with the same posture he had arrived in, still, grounded, watching the moment unfold without trying to bend it. Jimmy said, there's no line to close this. Elon nodded. Then don't close it. Let it exist. Jimmy asked, and what do we call it? Elon replied, a conversation. One that didn't ask to be packaged. Backstage, a floor manager whispered, we've gone over time. They're not even recording cues anymore. The director didn't flinch. He simply said, let it end when it ends. Jimmy leaned forward. One more question, not for the audience, just for me. Are you ever lonely in this? Elon paused. For the first time that night, something cracked. Not his voice, not his composure. Just the space between words. He said, every day? But not because I'm misunderstood. Because I stopped expecting to be. Jimmy didn't follow up. He didn't pivot. He just looked at him quietly. And Elon looked back. Two men who knew how to fill a room, now choosing not to. No one clapped. No one stood. And when the director finally called cut, it wasn't with urgency. It was with caution, like stepping out of something that might never return if you touched it too quickly. Elon stood. Jimmy didn't try to shake his hand. And Elon didn't offer. They both just nodded. Not in agreement. Not in farewell. But in recognition. Because whatever that was, it hadn't been content. It had been something else. The interview aired without a title, just a timestamp and a fade-in. No intro music, no applause track. Jimmy Kimmel looked into the camera and said, "This next segment didn't go how we planned, so we didn't try to fix it. We're airing it as it happened. Make of it what you will." And then it began. For 23 minutes, the footage played exactly as it was. No commercial break, no post-production rhythm. Just Elon Musk in a chair refusing to be cornered, and Jimmy Kimmel gradually letting the frame collapse. There were no big moments, no walk-off, no shouting. But by the end, something had shifted, and everyone could feel it. Clips surfaced slowly. They didn't trend, but they spread, quietly, relentlessly, in the kinds of spaces where people study tone more than content. One blog wrote, "No winner, no loser. Just two men who stopped trying to be interesting and accidentally became human." A tweet read, "That wasn't a clash. It was a surrender." And it made me rethink what I call a confrontation. Elon Musk didn't comment. He never reposted the clip. But when asked during a press event days later what he thought of the interview, he said, "It was the first time I said things I didn't rehearse. That's all I'll say." Jimmy Kimmel didn't frame it again either. But in a later episode, after another high-profile guest offered a polished, rehearsed performance, Jimmy looked at the camera and said, "Not every guest comes here to be liked. Some just come to be present. And if you've seen it happen, you don't forget it." He didn't name Elon. He didn't have to. The chair Elon sat in wasn't used again that week. Not for any reason written down. Just instinct. The room needed time to exhale. Because some moments don't leave when they end. They stay. Not as noise, but as proof.